Can I have my all panelists please turn on their videos up since we are running short of time. So let me talk about it in 1 second. Is that, in my morning talk, I also said cybersecurity and blockchain are an important component of accelerating the adoption of Industry 4.0. And this particular session talks about how can we actually overcome these cybersecurity hurdles in the manufacturing industry. So now for that, we have Dr. Amiruddin Abdul Wahab, CEO of Cybersecurity Malaysia. We have Ms. Mel Migrino, Vice President and Group CISO, MERALCO, Mr. Ken Mizota, CTO of Rapid7, and Mr. Steven Sim, Chair of Executive Committee for OT-ISAC. So without spending any more time on what we are going to talk about, it will be more on IT-OT convergence and various cybersecurity component for robotics, etc. So let me first invite Dr. Amiruddin to actually come and introduce himself. And then I have a question for you, Dr. Amiruddin. Like Malaysia has been leading one of the efforts in robotics and automation, what are the 2 or 3 challenges that you see in terms of maturity, and what do you see the role of robotics and automation in next 5 years?
Thank you, Dr. Satyam. Thanks to the organizer. My name is Amiruddin Abdul Wahab. I'm the CEO of Cybersecurity Malaysia. So my core business is actually in security, but in our organization, we do involve a bit on robotics and in Industry 4.0, especially because of the issue of security. So this is where we come into the picture. But overall, as per the questions by Dr. Satyam, Malaysia is actually committed to this robotics and automation, since this is part of a line to our national Industry 4.0 plan, or we call it Industry Forward. And in fact, in terms of ranking by the IMD World Competitiveness Report, Malaysia is ranked 27th out of 64 countries responded, and robotics is on the 26th ranking. So Malaysia is committed and have been putting a lot of emphasis on science and technology and productivity in line to the Industry 4.0 initiative, which I mentioned. And the reason is because of robotics play an integral roles in 2 aspects. One, the robotic itself is a product of science, technology, and innovation, especially in the wake of R 4.0. So that's why Malaysia is stressing on that. And second, robotics also have been proven as one of the key elements that provide solutions to issues and challenges faced by the manufacturing sector. And that basically means productivity, labor, and also issue of cost. So in Malaysia, robotics, especially in the Industry 4.0 plan, meant to improve productivity in the manufacturing sector. So with robotics, it allows for tasks of 24/7, lower overhead costs, and also smart tech, which allows a reduction of human error. But then we do have challenges in Malaysia, especially in terms of the adoption of this robotics, not only to major companies, but also to the SMEs, where even though they know the global trend, only 30% started to invest and leverage on these modern technologies. And the other common problems, actually ability to identify which processes should be automated, and there are difficulties to handle paperwork and documentation in applying government grants related to robotics and SMEs. Another challenge is the issue of security, managing problems in security and robotics, such as the issue of integrity, the possible modification, addition of data, insecure communication, authentication, privacy issues, and even weak default configuration. So there are many issues with regards to the issues. So I've highlighted some of the key elements. I've highlighted the 3 challenges, but then I still feel that Malaysia has a future, especially the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to robotics, because we have several national policy in regards to Industry Forward, or Industry 4.0, which we also established in October 2018. This is actually a national initiative to drive transformation in manufacturing sector through technologies. And then on July 2021, we launched the national policy on 4IR. This initiative to increase countries' readiness to harnessing potential of 4IR and to transform into high income and nation driven by technology and digitalization. And also the other one is on February 2021, we have My Digital, which is a digital economy blueprint in which digital technologies is being seen as important in driving the national economy. So as such, my future hopes, and I believe there is a bright future of robotics in Malaysia in the next 5 to 10 years, is that robotics will be able to replace most of the automation system that's currently I would say used in the factories in Malaysia. And also the need for the future manufacturing to work side by side with the human, especially when it comes to robotics. And then with the IoT applications in every robotic systems, the need to, I think, move towards a complete smart manufacturing concept. That means the factory of the future. So yes, I think there is a future in terms of robotics in the country, and also challenges, no doubt, but I believe all countries do have challenges with regards to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amruddin. That was wonderful. I certainly see that the increase in robotics for a future is like at the horizon, and certainly will impact many of the industries that we see. And I think 5 years we will see a different world pretty much in many areas. I don't know if you have more time, then I can ask you one more question. I think you're mute, Dr. Amruddin.
I think I have to leave very shortly because of some urgent matters.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much. All right. Let me then ask our second panelist, Ms. Mel Migrino, if I said the name right. Ms. Migrino, can you please introduce yourself first, and then I'll ask the question after that.
Sure. So, hi everyone. Good morning. Good evening. So, my name is Mel Migrino. I'm actually the Vice President in the Group CISO of MERALCO. MERALCO is actually the largest power deal in the Philippines. I also, aside from taking care of the parent company, I also take care of all 8 businesses of MERALCO. So I look after defining and actually calibrating the IT and OT security strategies of the organization. And I work very closely with the board and with the senior management in terms of operationalizing all of the cybersecurity initiatives. Happy to be in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ms. Mel, you know, we all talk about IT, OT convergence, and you know, pretty much so many forums are there and discussion takes place. If one has to really achieve a true convergence, then in your experience, what are the effective ways to deal with cybersecurity if we really have to get a good IT, OT convergence which is efficient and effective?
Yeah, so I think actually, in my opinion, as we reap the benefits of improving operational processes, right, through automation and lowering the operations and maintenance costs, that actually brings forward with this IT and OT convergence. We cannot actually discount the fact that IT and OT teams have different priorities. So, like in my experience, the IT security or the cybersecurity team would be actually concerned with implementing security controls and policies that reduce their attack surface. But from an OT perspective, usually an engineer would actually be more concerned with availability of the service and efficiency of the processes. IT teams would actually want to focus on deploying new solutions to actually remediate their BAU problems. But OT guys would look at proven technologies as well as methodologies to actually ensure reliability. But there should be a common ground in coming to terms with security imperatives.
I think we may have lost Ms. Mel connection. So
which can be sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we lost you for a few seconds.
Yeah, so let me just continue my statement. So, like what I have been discussing earlier is that IT teams would want to focus on new solutions as well, but the OT teams would want to look at proven methods to actually ensure reliability. But there should be a common ground in coming to terms on the security imperatives, which can be done through a systematic risk assessment process that can identify the different threats and vulnerabilities of within the converged infrastructure. So from one asset going to the next, depending on how the asset in the IT and OT networks are actually architectured. So that would come in first. Then the second one would be the extent to which they are integrated. And then probably the third would revolve around hardware, software, firmware, as well as protocols that's actually used within the network. But very specific on the cybersecurity priorities. So just to share with the audience, so in terms of like going through an OT transformation, I think it is crucial that there is an asset and process inventory and visibility, as well as defining all points of integration. Another thing would revolve around incident response plans. So that would actually include your technology as well as the resources. So in terms of resources, I'm referring to the SOC teams. Like in our case, from the SOC teams, we spin off to an IoT SecOps team that actually primarily focuses within OT plus our IT and OT infrastructure. That is, which you can actually extend, going to your EDR or let's say XDR capabilities. And then the second would be there has to be a discipline in terms of providing continuous vulnerability scanning and facilitate threat hunting activities based on the OT and IoT related IOCs. And then you need to strengthen as well as your compliance through red teaming capabilities. You need to build a cross-functional resources. You need to have your security architecture neatly overlaid with your overall IT and OT infrastructure. And of course, I think other things would revolve around, your core IT processes, which is not normally inherited within the convergence, more so within your OT environment, which will be your change management process and patch management processes. So I think these are some, if not all, of the security imperatives that can be considered when you would want to undergo IT and OT integration or convergence. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, so those imperatives are pretty interesting, but one of the things that is also talked about in the same context is blockchain. So what do you think is the future, or what is the direction for blockchain in this IT-OT convergence, or for the manufacturing industry, if you want to be more specific?
I think Dr. Satyam, very specific on the manufacturing industry. So a main challenge that I'm seeing with the large scale manufacturing is in its inherent building blocks, or which is practically the supply chain. So by its very nature, large scale means a lot of moving parts. So with multiple moving parts, there will be a lot of opportunities, I would say, for errors. Whether the error is actually intended or unintentional, which can lead to fraud. With the use of the distributed ledgers, data synchronization actually comes naturally. Whatever comes out of one supplier is immediately synchronized with the whole of your ecosystem. If properly designed, even the source of the supplier can be actually included. So if there is a problem with your raw material delivery, for instance, with the source, an alert can be sent almost immediately, going to your whole chain, that a potential delay can happen, as well as alternative sources can also be taken into consideration and studied. Another benefit that I'm seeing is that information availability, I would say, is more resilient, even with the failure caused by, let's say, fire or let's say earthquake. for that matter, that led to the destruction of a supplier IT infrastructure transactions can be traced through the global chain. So that's taken into consideration, of course, highly distributed nodes with blockchains, requiring series of transactions going to the next. It is easier to trace fraud as well as identify fraud. It is practically saying if a supplier is not has not taken delivery, let's say, of 1,000 of nickels, it should not be able to deliver these thousands within a short period of time, at a very competitive price. I think that's the one. I think that's the key message in a nutshell.
Thank you, Ms. Mel. Let me now invite Mr. Ken Mizota, the CTO for Rapid7. Mr. Mizota, I'm sure an audience would love to learn about you. So if you can introduce yourself in next 1 or 2 minutes, that will be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Priyadarshy. My name is Ken Mizota, and I am the Regional Chief Technology Officer for Asia Pacific and Japan for Rapid7. And for the last 20 years, Rapid7 has provided market-leading security solutions to teams around the globe. And for myself personally, I've held leadership positions in technology development at Rapid7, as well as previously at digital forensics and incident response providers. And so I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about cybersecurity in manufacturing.
So as you said, Rapid7 has been in the space, cybersecurity space, for quite some time. Mm-hmm. If you were to look back and see how it has impacted or accelerated the IT/OT convergence for your partners, and how you see its role in maturing in the IR 4.0 revolution, that will be, if you can shed some light on that, that will be wonderful.
Sure. So let me see if I can carve a path through these topics of the IT/OT convergence, smart factories, Industry 4.0. And from a security perspective, it might be easiest to think through this convergence. Yes, there are many components and there are many elements, for example, that Mel had mentioned, but from my perspective, it's easiest to look at it in terms of incident response. The way that we look at incident response is it's really a challenge for all industries. When an event happens to you, what do you do? How do you act? And it's really an industry transcending problem because it puts the combination of what matters most to a company, their business, right next to the technology that enables that business, and it brings in the people that operate it. And when you put those three things together in a stressful or in a moment of distress, which is what an incident is, any human is going to tell you that we don't do our best thinking when we are under distress. And so smart factories and the future of manufacturing are really a great example of where these challenges come together. You have a converged technology stack. You have a staff that is optimized for efficiency, meaning that maybe you have less staff, and you have innovation driving business outcomes. You have new technology, new approaches that are driving outcomes for the business. And this mixture of new and old and processes and technology and people and robotics is actually a lot of change to digest. And so, when you think about an incident that occurs, a breach, for example, traditionally incident response has been very effortful, and it's required very high skill and focus during a crisis. And as attacks and exposures have increased over the years, the industry has naturally responded with solutions and offerings and things like that. But as I like to think about the future in terms of an author, William Gibson, who coined the term cyberspace, he said, the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. And that's kind of how I look at the future, looking of security, is that there's three elements that I can see that are going to come into play, particularly across all industries, but also in IT/OT and in manufacturing. For the business, it's really the evolution of cyber insurance. Perhaps the most direct and easily understood solution by a business stakeholder. And it's easy to say right now that it's here to stay, and it's only going to grow and continue to grow in maturity and influence. The second thing that I'll mention in the future is around people, and the challenge that we have with skills and maintaining a level of expertise so that you know what to do during an incident. Mel mentioned playbooks, is going to continue to be challenged, and it's going to be that way for the foreseeable future. Now, for technology, and this is something that, where at Rapid7 we spend most of our time thinking about, is the trends are leaning towards IT leaders taking a greater or broader ownership of OT security. So that convergence means that the things that work in IT and OT are starting to come together, technology is starting to blend. And for this, because of the shortage of skills, the rise of managed detection and response capabilities and services, many of which incorporate both IT and operational elements into their playbooks, can really help with the people and the technology. And so coincidentally, many of these practices are actually requirements to obtain insurance. And so, these may sound like, some of these things may sound like today, but for many organizations, this literally is the future because they're not there yet. And so, you don't know how you don't have insurance and you're not quite sure how to get it. They don't have expertise codified in playbooks, meaning that they're unprepared when an incident occurs. And their technology needs continuous monitoring and response, but they can't do because they don't have the tooling or the capabilities. And so Rapid7, of course, we're in a fortunate position because we offer market-leading solutions that work better together, and we enable you to manage your vulnerabilities, including your IT and OT environments, as well as a variety of other solutions around cloud infrastructure, containers, SIEM, extended detection and response. We have a long list of capabilities that help secure the enterprise and build out your security program. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So this is a good segue to Mr. Stephen Sim, who's the chair for Executive Committee at OT-ISAC. Mr. Stephen, maybe if you can introduce, then I can follow up on the question after the discussion with Mr. Ken.
Sure. Thanks for having me on this panel. I'm volunteer as the chair of the OT-ISAC Executive Committee. OT-ISAC stands for Operational Technology Information Sharing and Analysis Center. So it's the one and only, one of its kind in terms of information sharing and analysis. In the world itself, you have Maritime ISAC, you have FS ISAC, all the different focus. OT-ISAC focuses on operational technology equipment across the entire group. So we share threat intelligence, our members share best practices using traffic light protocol or TLP, where they can share unreservedly on the latest threat intel that you may not find in the public domain. So I'm also the president of the ISAC Singapore chapter, and my day job is undertaking the global CISO role at a large logistics MNC, and we use a lot of OT equipment. Yeah.
Yeah. So excellent background you have to discuss this challenge. In the IT OT convergence, the same question that I asked Ms. Mel. If you think with the practices that you have been involved in, what will be the three most important challenges that one really need to focus on so you can reduce the risk of cyber threats in the manufacturing industry or in any complex industry for that matter?
Yeah. So let me first start off with again Sun Tzu's Art of War. Says know thyself, know your enemies, and you win 100 battles. So it is important when we look at these challenges, we focus first on what we understand about OT. And OT is very unlike IT. It comprises very much legacy equipment, right? That was originally meant for closed networks. In secure by design, because it's a closed network, so there's very little concern initially with authentication and encryption and so forth. And they're often slower to patch, like what Mel has rightfully pointed out earlier, because they have a longer runway for safety tests, because OT focuses very much at the topmost, safety first. And we have seen how patches, whether it's Microsoft Windows, whether it's Linux patches that have been recalled and rolled back because of issues. And with manufacturing 4.0, with industry 4.0, with the convergence of IT and OT, this attack surface is opened up, and it doesn't help also with COVID situation where you work from home, where the internet is a new corporate parameter, right? So therefore, the challenges with securing OT in industry 4.0 or manufacturing 4.0 is because of this enlarged operating surface, is because you can't really use patching as solution to vulnerability remediation. You have to look at it from a more holistic angle. You have to look at zero trust, like what the previous speaker spoke about. You have to look at network micro-segmentation. And if you look at know your enemies, look at the ransomware threats that are out there, how easily they spread from machine to machine. IT convergence doesn't help with that. If the security architecture is not properly put in place, take for instance, OT equipment using the same Active Directory as IT equipment or IT endpoints, an attack can come in, whether it's a phishing email or malicious thumb drive into a user endpoint, and then from there the hacker laterally move and compromise the Active Directory, and the same Active Directory, because it's authenticated by the OT equipment, it causes all the human-machine interfaces of the OT equipment to be compromised as well and rendered unusable. So this is just one form of threat. The other form of threat with manufacturing processes is because hackers can implement backdoors, and with automation, all these backdoors can be built in without the human oversight, right? We always believe that automation helps to remove human errors. But if, let's say, a backdoor code is included inside the manufacturing process, that backdoor is simply replicated across all the OT equipment that is sold to customers and then used as like what was shared earlier, like what Ken shared, supply chain attacks. Yeah, your OT hardware supply chain as a client, as a customer of OT equipment, that becomes a backdoor that can allow my systems to be compromised. So in my previous work life, I've tested automated guided vehicles, and I discovered that the vendors, OT vendors, have included backdoors inside the lasers that manage to for monitoring obstacles and detect obstacles. And the backdoors, if you send special packets, network packets to it in a specific way, it will cause the entire AGV to lock down. Because of safety reasons, you lock up. So imagine if you are a nation with a lot of automated vehicles running in the world, and this vulnerability is exposed and is attacked, all these vehicles will be stopped on their tracks, and transport will be slow to a halt itself. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen. Let me ask the MC if we have any questions from the audience. Nikita, do we have?
Not as of now.
Okay.
We will most definitely let you know, sir. Yes.
So anyway, I have a number of questions. If anybody wants to ask, they should ask in the now before we run out of time. So one of the questions I think Mr. Ken just briefly touched, I think, in his conversation about keeping the talent or the workforce ready, right? So my question is to all the three panelists who are here is, what is the role of talent maturity for this IT-OT convergence and IR4 practices? What do you see as the challenges, and what are you or your organizations doing to really bring that talent to be mature? So maybe we start with Ms. Mel, then we go to Stephen, and then come to Mr. Ken.
Okay, yeah, I think my thoughts around it, Dr. Satyam, would be the skills and capabilities within the IT and OT convergence. One must be diverse. IT and OT teams have to begin working together, which means that they need to spend more time together, sharing information, and of course aligning efforts. So it's practically building cross-functional teams. So echoing on my statement earlier. And then of course it is essential to carry out and supplement the strengths and weaknesses of the other. So I think that's the benefit of having a cross-functional team. Also including including OT seasoned practitioners within the IT and cybersecurity leadership teams will help bolster faster execution and senior management support. So I think those are my thoughts around
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Stephen, your thoughts on this topic?
I agree with Mel as well. I think the current misnomer is that cybersecurity folks may not understand the backyard of OT equipment well enough. So if cybersecurity folks keep recommending, for instance, patching, you must apply the same IT security standards. You must have OT equipment that can authenticate with the network. Then all the equipment will fail miserably at audits and so forth, because OT, like I shared, has its own nuances, right? It is inherently insecure by design. So there needs to be other cybersecurity practices put in place, like zero trust and threat intelligence. So it is important for both ways, the cybersecurity folks and the OT engineers to come together to collaborate, for the IT folks to learn for the cybersecurity folks to understand the OT nuances and how fragile they are. For instance, you can't pen test a live OT system because it is actually adds a lot of risk. They have sometimes half-baked TCP/IP stacks. The Modbus Profit can just crash if you pen test it, for instance. So they need to understand all these nuances. And from the OT space, they need to understand what are the cybersecurity threats so that they can come together and perform the right threat modeling. Whether it is a vendor bringing a maintenance notebook, come in and connect to the PLCs, there's a risk that the PLC code may change or connect to the human machine interface and cause the human machine interface, the malware to be loaded and then spread across and become a ransomware attack that breaches every single machine out there. So this understanding, there are courses out there definitely that educates both ways, and it is important to be trained and have the experience and exposure, and of course, like I shared, one of the key areas of securing IT and securing OT is with zero trust, and to understand the zero trust approach to ring fence to limit the blast radius, and as well as undertaking the assume breach approach, understanding what it takes to implement active cyber defense, to ingest threat intelligence, and then use the threat intelligence for threat hunting, what American has shared about, to be able to therefore detect fast, contain fast, and recover fast. And in this space, like what has been shared by Ken as well, the incident response, you have to understand how to handle automated equipment in terms of incident response. And business continuity planning is a dicey topic over here, especially because in a fully automated factory, there is no manual fallback. You can't rely on manual business continuity planning. So your disaster recovery has to be very robust. You must look at concentration risk, not to over rely on a single vendor, and you must diversify your risk. And last but not least, or as a whole, look at proper risk governance. Everything goes back to risk. You can't secure everything perfectly. You have to run a business. You have to look at P&L. So you have to look at risk-based approach to optimize risk for the smart factory. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Mr. Ken, to you, since you brought this topic up, what Rapid7 has been doing, and how do you see industry actually addressing it?
Well, I think first of all, I wanted to echo a couple of points. I think Mel and Stephen made some great points around diversity and cross functionality and engaging with your stakeholders, and it's not unlike what developers and IT and DevOps and security have to go through. It's not unlike OT and security. It's a similar, they're not like you, so you need to learn a little bit about them, and that's a mindset that people need to take on. One of the things that I think is important for us all to recognize is that there's a condition of the world. I was just listening to the Okta talk that was going on beforehand. There's a condition of the world that we're all going under, and the market and the world has a vote in how we respond. There happens to be a great demand now for skills, and so as soon as you train up your team, as soon as you get them knowledgeable and you build those relationships, they're becoming more and more valuable every day. So just like many things in security, our job is to mitigate risk. one of the risks is not having a team because they've gone off and done something else if they've gotten smarter. And so hiring and management needs to be a real competency. And that's something that we try to do here at Rapid7, but we also try to make sure that our tools are aware of that as we're deploying them. The other thing that I think is really important is that, and this forum is a great evidence of this, and I know Mel participates in the community as this as well, is that lean on your partners. Lean on your communities, engage, get out there, because that's where the real connections are happening, information sharing and in roundtables and things like that. And even in partners and vendors like Rapid7, obviously lean on us to make sure that, because we offer services and products and managed services, et cetera, that can help get you through tough spots and be part of your overall strategy.
Thank you, Mr. Ken. I think we're running out of time, so I really would like to thank all the panelists, co-panelists with me, and of course, one of our panelists has to leave early, but nevertheless, the topic is very important: IT/OT convergence, maturity on the Industry 4.0 paradigm, and of course, the talent transformation is also an important component of that. And so, I think what we have learned today is some of the very interesting best practices from different organizations in different parts of the world. I think some of those messages will resonate with the audience, and I'm sure that if you have any questions in the future, you can reach out to any of the panelists here anytime, and we will be happy to help. With that, I will hand it over to Nikita.
Fantastic session, leaders, and like we always do at 𝐒𝐲𝐬, a big round of applause, and we would request you to kindly applaud yourselves along with us. Fantastic session. Thank you so very much for your time, amazing leaders, and hope to see you very soon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.